thoughts. Senior law enforcement analyst and visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation, Mark Morgan. Distinguished professor at Touro University, Thane Rosenbaum. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen. Mark, I'll start with you. You've been plugged into the community. What is your feeling when you see this? Did you see signs, and do you think that they are credible when they talk about retaliation and they talk about weaponizing the agency, the FBI?
Yeah, I spent 20 years in the FBI, and I retired as an assistant director. And what I heard was these gentlemen, I believe they were retaliated. And that's very important. But I want to comment on what one of the Democratic chairwoman said. It was unconscionable. I'm almost speechless when she accused these men who had prior military service, prior law enforcement service, served honorably in the FBI, to actually call them a threat to our national security. That is outrageous. That is irresponsible. She should be sanctioned. She should be removed from that committee for making those statements. And I'm saying that regardless of whether you believe them or not, or their perception, to comment on them and charge them, but basically call them a terrorist. I mean, that's basically what she was saying. It's profound. And I think it also represents the divide. Look, the issue is whether you believe them or not, the perception is there. And we have to honestly and openly talk about that perception, because the truth is that's their reality. And it's the reality of many Americans about the FBI. That's why many Americans' trust in the FBI and the Justice Department has been eroded.
Yeah, and Thane, Congresswoman Kat Cammack did not mince words when she spoke at today's hearing about the whistleblowers. Take a listen.
It is inaccurate and wrong to make that assumption that Republicans want to defund police. It is false, because forcing a political agenda down the throats of our hardworking men and women of the FBI with the threat and then subsequent follow through of retaliation because they are whistleblowers, because they didn't want to break the law, because they knew that it was wrong to target Americans without cause, and they swore an oath to the United States Constitution, not to a political party. That makes them whistleblowers. That makes them courageous for coming forward and telling the truth.
Yeah, Thane, it seems like there was a lot of back and forth about what is the definition of whistleblower, as opposed to actually focusing on what these three men were saying and what their experiences have been.
Well, Katrina, it was a terrible week for the FBI. First the Durham report, and then today, this hearing. Look, this is very threatening to the Biden administration and the FBI. For FBI agents to publicly challenge in a hearing the official narrative of January 6th, to call attention to the possibility that that the investigative tactics were unnecessarily aggressive, right? That this idea that there's a particular story that the Biden administration wants and the FBI about January 6th, which was that 35,000 white supremacists came to the Capitol, and Donald Trump told them to overtake the Capitol and reinstall him as the president. Actually, there were 34,000 who never got anywhere near the Capitol. Of the 1,000, very few of them were Proud Boys or Oath Keepers or white supremacists, very few. And some FBI agents, they don't want you to know about the number of law enforcement people that were there or military veterans. And that, in fact, some of the FBI officials themselves, agents, questioned this manner in which the FBI chose to prosecute and investigate those people who entered the Capitol. Not to say they didn't commit crimes, but they were just questioning, and that was just too much for the FBI, because they need a complete story, and they'll punish you if you don't give them what they want to hear.
Mark, it was heartbreaking to hear some of these gentlemen talk about how it affected their lives. I mean, folks, you may not think about this, but if there's retaliation, you're either suspended or fired, can't get a job elsewhere within the government. The people may not trust you. And they've given their lives. I mean, getting into the FBI is quite an accomplishment, Mark. And for them, they talked about having difficulty supporting their families. I mean, so there are real consequences when there is retaliation, assuming that's what was going on here. What do you think needs to be done to fix this kind of situation?
First of all, I agree. I couldn't have said it better myself. And it's very important. I mean, the Democrats on this panel today were treating them as criminals. There was no crime committed here by anybody. There's no crime being alleged. There was simply a alleged violation of FBI policy. That's a far cry than calling someone a national security threat. It's unconscionable. But this is what I call a defining moment for a leader. This is about leadership right now. And look, I led an agency as commissioner of CBP that was twice the size of the FBI. And I'm telling you what I would do right now. If I was a director of the FBI, I would hold a national press conference. First, I would absolutely address the Durham report specifically. I would talk about the failures. I'd talk about specific actions we're taking. I would talk about January and the dichotomy, the fact we called parents terrorists and we suppressed a Hunter Biden laptop. Number two, I would specifically address these issues, just as you said, Bob. And I would make sure, and I would tell the American people that every single one of these whistleblowers, there's going to be, and I support an independent investigation into each and every allegation that they have, and that I'm going to make that public to the American people. That is what has to be done for him to remotely attempt to regain the public's trust in the FBI.
All right, Mark Morgan, Thane Rosenbaum, and of course, Thane, you said not a good week for the FBI. Couldn't be more right. Thanks to both of you for joining us.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
And we continue the conversation on these three FBI whistleblowers.